Ladies and gentlemen, the beat goes on.
Turn it up.
What you're about to hear may cause your speakers to explode.
Grant's Rock Warehouse is keeping it real in the field.
Get ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight we are live. We are doing another episode in our Electric Light Orchestra series. Tonight we are looking at Electric Light Orchestra Part 2. This is the Bevan project. A lot of people may not have heard this stuff. We're going to play a couple of tracks, and we're going to talk about it. The panel is here. We are ready. Let's do it.
Piling on the power chords and pure pandemonium. Grant's Rock Warehouse.
All right, everybody, we are live and we are here and we're ready to wrap some ELO Part 2. Look at this panel. We've got Webb. Look at him. Looking peace sign. What's with that Rush album in the background? I'm not sure what's happening with Webb. We've got the Parish. We've got Marco. We are here. We're going to talk ELO Part 2. Now, like I said in the intro, I don't think a lot of people may have heard this stuff. I didn't pay attention to it back in the day. I didn't care. Now, if you know the way we do these shows, we are now playing music. We're sampling the songs because everybody says, "Oh, Grant, oh, it's great." You play music, all right, but you've got to tune into the live show because the archive show yanking it out. So anyway, we'll play a couple of tracks. We do want to hear from you in the chat. Let's see. What do we have? Let's see who's here, for God's sakes. I haven't looked, but I'm assuming West Coast Dave's here. No, Cretan's here. Let's see. Oh, Kevin's here. Kevin! Nice to see ya. Steven's here. Look at Steven. Bless his heart. Michael's here. Michael, you see? Look, here's an example where someone hasn't heard any of this stuff. And you've got Marlon here who will poo-poo on our parade.
Marlon.
But he has never heard Part 2, so this might be a show for him. So anyway, grunge time. I'm not sure. There's no grungy here. Anyway, let's keep moving because we have a lot to cover. So we're going to start off here, and I'm going to turn it over to Marco to talk about it probably because he is our ELO enthusiast. But Electric Light Orchestra Part 2 formed in 1989 by original ELO drummer Bev Bevan. So after ELO broke up, Jeff Lynne, of course we know, was the primary songwriter, leader of the original band, declined to go on. So Bev, it's Bev for God's sakes, he assembled a new group drawing some from some old ELO alumni and new musicians. That's it in a numbshell. Does that make sense? No. Anyway, when I listen to this stuff, it sounds very much like a lot older stuff because there are actually symphonic elements on here as opposed to where Balance of Power we turned into a synth band. So, but anyway, the way we do this, we do want to hear from you if you've heard about these albums. We'll ask for a rating. We're going to keep it loose as always. I'm going to turn it. Oh, Marco, I am so sorry. You've got stuff on your head. Jesus. See, I was doing my spiel. Hold on.
Getting attacked.
God, let's fix that layout. Anyway, I'm going to throw it over to Marco. Marco is our enthusiast, our ELO aficionado. Marco, do you want to start off and talk about these? Well, let's talk about ELO Part 2. I'll turn it over to you. And I can't hear you. And I can't hear you still.
What? Oh, my microphone is muted for some reason.
There you go. Now I can hear you.
Odd. Anyway, I was actually really excited to jump into these albums because I'm a big ELO fan, but I never really listened to anything after Time up until we got to those next two albums. So this was new for me, and I had known about ELO Part 2. Yeah, you're right. I think even the seed of ELO Part Two kind of even started before '89. I think even when the band went on hiatus, I think Bev was kind of itching to get back on the road and work, and he approached Jeff Lynne in '88 and asked him to reform the band and put a studio album together and go tour, and Jeff declined. And by this point, and I've read
the books. Now you're muted again.
I'm getting muted in SteamYard for some reason. I don't know why.
I can't. I'm not muting you. Only I can't unmute. Well, I'm not muting you.
Oh, I'm not touching nothing, but I'll keep an eye on it. Anyways,
Keep an eye on it.
So at this point, when the band broke up, Jeff wanted to focus on producing and working with other bands, and he was finding a lot of success in the Traveling Wilburys. He was working with Tom Petty, writing with Tom Petty, Roy Orbison. He was like producing Del Shannon, like all these different acts. He wanted to kind of put his producer hat on and stay in the studio. He didn't want to tour, and he just wanted to write and record. And he said no. And I think at this point, according to the book, I think he was burned out from ELO. He was burned out from being in the studio and writing ELO songs, and basically he was kind of in an ELO bubble for a lot of years. So he had no interest, especially because he was having all this success outside ELO. He had no interest in reforming it. So because Bev owned half the name, because I guess Roy lost it when he quit, right? So I guess Roy didn't have.
I'm assuming. I don't know how they set that up, but
so
evidently Bev still owned half of it.
So Bev owned half the name. I'm seeing a comment that says he also asked Roy. Yeah, so he did ask Roy Wood, and Roy Wood also declined to be a part of it. So basically,
oh my God, what you would have? I'm sorry to interrupt, but just between us girls here, wouldn't you have thought that this would have been a great moment to have Roy join back with Bev and continue on? I'm just saying, the great Roy Wood.
It would have been interesting. And to jump ahead a little bit, they actually did Roy Wood around the same time that ELO Part Two was performing. Apparently, from what I've read and heard, I haven't seen or heard any evidence of it, but apparently, according to this book and some stuff I read online, Roy Wood did join them on stage, ELO Part Two, on more than one occasion. And I believe to join them in encores, and they would play like Blackberry Way, and I think Overture, 105.38 or whatever. Anyways, I think they played a few songs with like 2 songs with Roy live. This happened on more than one occasion. They may have even shared the same bill with him, and he played solo stuff or something. Anyways, so that is absolutely fascinating to me. So is the idea and concept of ELO Part Two. In theory, I find that this is absolutely a fascinating part of like music history when it comes to ELO. So Jeff was not happy about this. They had some type of lawyers were involved and stuff like this. So basically what they decided was they were able to go out and call themselves ELO with the caveat of Part Two was attached to it, so that there would be a distinguishment between the Jeff Lynne project and what they were doing without Jeff Lynne. So this was some kind of legal agreement. Although Jeff actually got there was an agreement that Jeff got royalties from ELO Part Two. So he actually was making money while ELO Part Two was operating. The first album that came out was mostly a Bev Bevan project. There wasn't a lot of former ELO members on it. I think Mick Kaminsky played on like 1 song, and Lewis Clark played on 1 or 2 songs or something like this. And I find, in theory, I'm very fascinated by this era. In practice, I find the albums to be, both of them, but I'll start with the first one, to be pretty disappointing. I'm not a humongous fan of either album. I think it's evident, like they start the first album with Hello, which right away it sounds like old ELO, and Honest Men sound like old ELO. And I think that's part of the problem, was they're trying to capture maybe that mid-70s ELO sound, but in the 90s. And without Jeff Lynne, I think at best it's like marginal, the albums. I'll talk about just the first album, because I think I like the second one a little bit more. But the first album, I just don't find anything compelling about it or interesting about the studio music. I find that they're doing some old stuff that does remind me of old ELO, but it pales in comparison, because without Jeff Lynne, who is the heart of the band, you're kind of just, especially with the name ELO Part Two, you have no choice but to compare it to ELO, right? And the early stuff. And I think now, coming from somebody who's a non-musician, this is easier to say, but I think they would have. I would have preferred them go even further back and try to emulate the first two albums rather than the mid 70s albums. Because I think if they kind of just became a prog band with orchestra and strings, I think that would have been a lot more interesting instead of trying to get that 70s pop stuff, especially because at the time, historically, music was shifting very dramatically in the early 90s. Like the hair metal bands were going away. The alternative bands were becoming popular. So to go and try to capture a mid 70s, late 70s sound, I think was probably a misstep. I think if they had just, again, it's easier to say, I think if they just kind of reverted to being a prog band with strings, I think that would have been more timeless. But just looking at the track listing for the first studio album, ELO Part Two, I mean, Honest Men, Hello, I think those remind me of ELO. Every Night reminds me of 80s Kiss more than it reminds me of ELO for some reason. God. So I don't think any of the songs really are. I think Jeff was the main songwriter, and he could write hits, and he could write catchy melodies. And I think without him, the songs that they're writing are just kind of paling in comparison to they're trying to capture that mid 70s ELO hit making pop rock band sound and failing to do so because it's hard. Now they're all competent musicians and they all clearly could play. And I think the musicianship is really good. And I think that's why if they kind of didn't try to write pop songs the way ELO did without Jeff Lynne being there, I just think it was a failure in that regard. Now, having said all that, I do think these two albums have kind of grown on me a little bit. But I really can't we'll start with the first one. I really can't give the first album much more than a 6. And that's I think that's kind of being fair. Heartbreaker, like there's some decent stuff on here that's kind of grown on me, but that's my assessment of the first album, which honestly, the second album is kind of the same for me, but we'll start.
All right. So we got a 6. Let's do this before we go to the Parish and Webb and get their thoughts. Let's play a track from this record. Again, let's keep. I mean, young Logan was dragging this album through the dirt. He can only imagine ELO with Jeff Lynne, and my God, Bevan, who was a partner in the whole thing. We can't have that. But let's play a track, and then we'll go from there, and we'll go over to the Parish and Webb and get their thoughts on it. All right, here we go. We're going to go off of the debut album. We're going to play, we're going to play Honest Man. So, all right, here we go. Let's, Elder, calm down. Jeez, getting all worked up. It's still ELO. It sounds like ELO. Anyway, so Marco, you gave this a 6?
I gave the album a 6. Yeah, it's grown on me a little bit. Like, that's probably the best song on the album.
All right, cool. Let's start over to the Parish. Now that my order's all screwed up. Parish, what's your thoughts on ELO Part 2?
Well, before we get on to that, I very nearly got a marker pen and crossed out Jeff Lynne and put Webb in.
Parish, you are cutting in and out. It sounds like you're in another dimension.
Is that better?
Yes.
I said I nearly got a marker pen and crossed out Jeff Lynne and put Bevin on my t-shirt because this is Bevin. Like.
Now you're cutting in and out. Your video looks good, but your audio is cutting it in and out. That was a crap fade. I get you, cretin. Fix the mic. What? My mic is good. Can you play a bit of the worst song?
Well, there's like 4 of them.
Just listen to the whole album.
Listen to the whole album. We're just giving you we'll just listen to the whole thing. Well, if I played, I'm not ready to do that though. I can't. ladies and gentlemen, there's prep for this show.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll wait for the Parish to get back. I'm going to throw it over to Webb. Webb, what's your thoughts on this record?
Okay, well, I didn't know it existed until, you said, let's do a show on ELO 2. And I was like, wow, okay. And I went, and so, I'm an ELO fan of the 70s mostly, and I didn't know this was even a thing. And so I went in with pretty mid to low expectations. And I put on the first song and that little piano pop ditty, little cheery Beatles. I mean, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then Honest Man kicked in, and I said, yeah, it does sound like some old classic ELO, real cleaned up like early 90s. Is the production wise, it's really just clean and kind of sterile, I think,
right,
is the way I heard it. And so I was like, okay, yeah. And then kind of every song after that just didn't do anything for me. I mean, I wrote that Every Night has a pretty cool guitar riff in it. I said I felt like I was hearing like Mike and the Mechanics or something. And Once Upon a Time, I said was pretty good. It had a little cool guitar solo in the middle, catchy verses and a pre-chorus. And there's some pretty good guitar in Once Upon a Time. Heartbreaker was yeah, just like guitar radio rock. Like this guy's voice is who's doing most of the singing on the first.
Eric
on this
Troyer,
first
I think.
Okay.
Do we know Eric's background?
No.
Only Bev was the consistent member from ELO up until the second album, and they had a few other guys come back.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and so, his voice kind of reminded me of like a bad Lou Gramm. I was getting like like a little bit of a Lou Gramm sound, but not a good Lou Gramm. Like he's trying to be, anyway. Thousand Eyes, I put bland, kind of middle of the road radio tune. Kiss Me Red kind of reminded me a little bit. It sounded like it should be the single. I don't know they probably didn't release a single, but if they did, that kind of sounded like it. Kiss Me Red. I heard a little 80s Lawyers in Love by Jackson Brown on that. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And then Easy Street is finally like a halftime kind of groove, and I thought it was pretty good. It's kind of a blues song, and I got through it, and I said, okay, yeah. The first thing I said is 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10.
And then, yeah, and it's better than Balance of Power. How about that?
Well, that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
That's the best I could say about it. Is it's better than Balance of Power.
Okay, Michael says Eric Troyer seems to be basically a session player. All right.
Yeah. So I wrote down 5.5 is what I wrote.
All right, 5.5.
Jumped into the halves. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I mean, just being honest.
That's fair. We're just being honest here in the Warehouse, and we're just trying to turn you on to stuff. If none of these albums jive with us, we're just being honest. So, Eric Troyer sings a lot of backing vocals on tons of studio albums. I am unaware of his work. I don't have a problem with what he's doing here. But it is what it is. All right. So we've got a 6 point. We got a 6 and a 5.5. All right. Parish, what's your thoughts on this?
Is this any better?
100%.
Yes.
You're loud and clear.
Yeah, I don't know what was wrong there. Okay, I'll start again. What I started by saying is I nearly got a marker pen and crossed out Jeff Lynne and put Bev Bevin, because this is Bev Bevin's ELO. I remember getting this at the time, and because there was no internet and nobody was making any putting out news about ELO in the music press, I bought this not knowing that it didn't have Jeff Lynne on it. And it was only when the vocals started that I went and listened, had a look at the album cover to see who was on it, that I realized this was a Jeff Lynne-less ELO. But I quite liked it then, and I quite like it now.
All right.
And I agree with the comments that were made earlier. I've seen a few people have said it in the chat as well, that this is almost an album of two parts, really. So it being called Part Two kind of makes sense. Half of the album sounds like ELO Light. It is kind of a facsimile of ELO in the 70s, but I like ELO in the 70s, and certainly in the early 90s, there wasn't that much music about that I liked, actually, so I kind of clung on to the things I did like. So I was quite happy to hear ELO from the 70s. The songs aren't as good. They're definitely missing Jeff Lynne. But I think some of the vocals are pretty good. And the songs that ELO like have got Troy singing. And I think he does a reasonable version of Jeff Lynne. I did a bit of research on him as well this afternoon because I'd never heard of him. And apparently he's on a lot of soundtracks like Footloose and things like that, backing vocalist on albums for John Lennon, Bonnie Tyler. So a lot of experience in the industry, but never as a frontman up to this point. But the reason I like the album is I think you could also call this Foreigner Part Two, because I think almost every other song sounds like a Foreigner song.
Yes, Parish.
And to me, this is better than Foreigner sounded by the early 90s. After Lou Gramm had gone, Foreigner had kind of gone off the mark as well. So I quite like the non-ELO sounding songs because I think they're not as good as Foreigner in their peak, I agree, but they're still quite good songs. So you've got Honest Man sounds like ELO, Every Night sounds like Foreigner, Once Upon a Time sounds like ELO, Heartbreaker sounds like Foreigner, Thousand Eyes sounds like ELO, For Love of a Woman sounds like Roy Orbison.
Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Real Breeze, that's ironic. Kiss Me Red sounds like ELO. And then the last track, Easy Street, kind of starts off like ELO because it's got strings, and then it sounds like Foreigner for the rest of the song. So I think this should be ELO meets Foreigner Part 2 is what I think this album should really be called. And for the early 90s, when that type of music, which I like, there wasn't a much about, I quite enjoyed it. I did miss Jeff Lynne. I don't think the songs are as good, but you know, sometimes you've got to take your pleasure where you can, don't you? And I quite enjoy it. So I'm going to give it a 6.5. I think it's. It's funny, really. I've got an entirely different view in saying that I quite like it, but my score isn't actually that far different. So 6.5.
All right, perfect. Now, anybody in the chat, if you are familiar with this record and can give a score, I'll take it. What are my thoughts on this record? All right, well, what are my thoughts? Well, how do I want to say it? I think, do we even call this a debut? I guess this would be considered a debut. I don't find it all that.
It's a debut all over again.
Yeah. I find it very, what's that?
I said deja debut.
A deja
debut. I find it very energetic. I find there's a lot of hooks on this record. It's pop rock. This is how I look at it. This is pop rock with an orchestral flair sprinkled on top. This is kind of like mid-period ELO. The production, I mean, we've got Jeff Glicksman on here. And you've got Lewis Clark doing the strings. So Lewis, of course, it's going to sound like ELO, but the production, I think, is very crisp. I think is very vibrant. We're talking 1991. Compared to a lot of other things, I think this sounds pretty good. The songwriting on this, I think, relies a lot on Eric Troyer. But it doesn't... Okay. I don't have a problem with Eric, but you do lack some of that Jeff Lynne quirky genius, melodic depth that Jeff would provide. But I think Eric Troyer, it sounds fresh and enthusiastic. I don't have a problem with what Eric's bringing. I think that there's some filler on this record. Kiss Me Red is a decent cover. It's kind of generic, though. But I do think that there's a lot of energy and fun. I think for me, that track we just played, I kind of dig it. Now, they're not changing the world here. They're not reinventing ELO. They're just doing a record they're basing it on something that's already happened. What would I say? It's tough. You're going to be surprised because I'm probably going to rate this higher than anybody else here, but I'm going to give, I think, hey, if you want ELO, it sounds like ELO enough for me. And, Bev was part of ELO. When I listened to it, because I didn't pay attention to it back in the day, when I listened to it, I was actually kind of surprised. So I think I'm going to give this a 7. But I'm not basing it on ELO numbers. I'm basing it on ELO Part 2, Obviously, we don't have Jeff here, but I don't think this is I do not find this as a bad debut. So I'll give it a 7. So we've got a 6, we've got a 5.5, we've got a 6.5 and a 7. Anybody in the chat can weigh in with a rating. Have you heard this record? Let us know. I'm looking through the chat.
Yeah, there's some.
Okay. Jeff said, okay, here we go. Okay. Jeff says, I gave it a 7.5 instead of a 7 because I knew Webb was going to poo-poo it. So should I go with a 7 or a 7.5? Guess I'll go 7.5. We've got West Coast Dave. Dave listened to it once today, and he came up with a 6.8. All right, I'm good with that. Let me write that down. Let's see. Anybody else coming in, weighing in on this record? We got Davey Cretin. He comes in with an 8.
I think that's
all right.
I don't hate the album, but I think that's generous because if you go back and take like El Dorado or Out of the Blue or New World Record and give those an 8 or a 9, how can you give ELO Part 2, the first album, an 8 or something? Not to be rude or nothing, just it's subjective, but it's just some of those other albums are 8 or 9s to me. This is like a 6. It's average.
All right, Cretin. All right, Cretin. Yeah. Explain yourself.
He already has. He saw them live.
Oh, he saw them.
Oh, live they were fantastic. Live ELO Part 2 live.
That may have influenced his score.
Yeah, I saw some live footage, and they're amazing live ELO Part 2.
Sorry, I'm hosting and clicking buttons, so I missed that. All right.
And let's be honest, if you see a band live, it can quite often elevate your view of the band.
All right, well, let's tally it. We're at 34 minutes, so we're at the halftime mark. Let's see what we've got. We'll calculate this, and we come up with a 6.8.
That's what West Coast Dave gave it.
Yeah, and he only
West Coast Dave.
And he only played it once.
And only played it once. Al says, so if you give the record a 7.5, does that mean Jeff Lynne was only worth 2.5 in the band?
I think that was the percentage cut he got, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just basing this on its own. I'm not trying to compare it to what came before. I don't know. How do you really rate this record?
How can you not compare it?
Yeah, exactly, Marco. Exactly.
ELO Part 2. It's begging to be compared.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're probably all full of shit then.
Well, that's kind of why I said 6.5 because I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
I don't mind.
If you put it on a scale of the earlier ELO albums, it doesn't match up. So
well, maybe my my issue is that I didn't pay attention to these back in the day, and I just went, oh, ha, 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 I'm not going to listen to that. But then when we have this task, when we're going out and listening to this now, I'm listening to it and I'm going, wow, this isn't bad at all.
Can I just say, though, if Bevin is watching, I mean, who knows? Because if Ian Hunter can watch, so can Bevin.
Exactly.
If
Ian Hunter's tapped in.
We all give it a 10 out of 10, Bev. Honest, we do. So
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to get Bev on this show.
The drumming gets at least a 10 out of 10, I would say, on this album.
Love your drumming, Bev.
Yeah, Webb, what would you rate Bev as on the drummer scale? Now, go ahead.
Well, overall,
no.
he's on this.
I need him out of 10. No, his career.
Career. Career. He's an 8 out of 10. I mean,
we're trying to get Bev on the show, Webb. He's a 10 out of 10.
He's a 10.5 out of 10. No, you kidding me?
Excellent.
I love the way he plays, and he holds his stick like this. Who does that? Only Bev.
Only Bev.
Cretan says, I had 14th row tickets to see ELO on the Zoom tour, and the whole tour was canceled. Anyway, we're gonna go with the 6.8.
My top 5 favorite drummers of all time. So
I love Bev.
Yeah,
but fabulous. All right, cool. All right, we'll move along. We're gonna go now to ELO Part 2. The album analysis of the album is Movement of Truth. 1994. I guess this came out on Edsel back in the day in the UK, but here it came out on Curb. So I'm going to throw it over to Marco to get his thoughts on it. Marco, what's your thoughts? What's your analysis of this?
Yeah, I do think that the second album is better. And I do feel like it feels more cohesive. Even production-wise, it feels a little warmer to me, a little more full to me. And I think those are good things. And I do like how the first album was kind of, probably Eric Troyer and represents a lot of, like the studio musicians and all these guys coming in. It wasn't as much of a band effort. I think the second album, you had Lewis Clark, Mick Kaminsky back in the band, and Kelly Grucut, who was, part of what made some of the 70s ELO songs distinguishable was Kelly Grucut's backing vocals. And now he's back.
Yeah.
Played with them live. And I think to Davey's point, I did watch like live footage of ELO Part 2, and they do a fantastic job live. They had the Moscow Symphony Orchestra with them, and they were able to pull off a lot more vocal harmonies than even they did with the original ELO from back in the day. I think they did live. They were fantastic. And I think maybe my issue more just in general is they probably should have if they just went out and toured. Because I mean, like I know Jeff Lynne was kind of bummed out that they continued ELO, but you have to admit, like these guys are musicians and they're working, and they had you know what I mean? They were able to go out and tour with this thing for over 10 years. They were touring as ELO Part 2, and it gave them work for all those years, right? I think the second album's a little bit better. Just looking at, let me look at the track listing here. Breaking Down the Walls. One More Tomorrow's catchy. You know what I mean? Like that's a type of like maybe older ELO type of song, maybe a bit of a like power ballad-esque. But I do like the second album a little bit better, and I do think they did fine. I think they did great live. And interestingly, I was mentioning this before we started recording, but after Bev sold his portion of the ELO name back to Jeff in the late 90s, 99, ELO Part 2 formed a new band called the Orchestra, and they put out some music. They put out an album, which I haven't listened to, but I did come across the song. I think it's called Some Kind of Magic, which is actually probably out of the two albums that we're talking about, with Some Kind of Magic, I think is my favorite song from this kind of version of whatever the band has become now when it becomes the Orchestra. Because they weren't allowed to use Electric Light Orchestra anyways. I don't know what that's worth. but I did like Some Kind of Magic. I do think they were a great live band. They did have a lot of success for 10 years. I like the second album a little bit better, and I'd give it a 6.5.
All right, 6.5. All right, well, let's play it. We do want to hear from you in the chat if you are familiar with this record. So we are going to play the track. We're going to play, what should we play? We're going to play, Breaking Down.
Yeah, Whiskey Girls is interesting too. That kind of reminds me of that old kind of like California Girl, or that kind of fits in that vein of the style of ELO. Anyways,
I agree. It's kind of a rocker.
All right. Well, anyway, we're going to play Breaking Down the Walls. The writer was Phil Bates on this track. So again, let us know what you think. Let's keep this interactive. Here you go. ELO Part 2. Here we go. This reminds me of Asia.
Love is blind, but I can't see. You're trying to make a fool of me. I know.
That's like Foreigner too.
I know.
But the guitar
sometimes it feels just like I'm running on ice. I might slip and slide good, but you won't hurt me twice.
But it's catchy as hell.
I know.
Those backing vocals now, you can hear it. That's Ellie Blue cut. That sounds like
sorry, everybody.
Love is passion, love is pain. The heat is on, we're all insane. I know.
Jellyfish. Yes, I hear jellyfish.
Life is bitter, life is sweet. You just can't ever admit defeat. Oh no.
I love it. I'm sorry. I love it.
Sometimes it feels like we've been fighting too long. You can't be right to make me feel so wrong. Oh no.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Breaking down the walls around your heart. You just can't stop me breaking down the walls around your heart. Did you ever feel like a Superman? Got the world in your hands, but you never can seem to break down the walls. Did you ever feel like a Johnny Man? Got your life in your hands, but you never can seem to break down the walls. Sometimes it feels just like I'm running on ice. I might slip and slide good, but you won't hurt me twice. Oh no. No matter what you say, you'll never stop me breaking down the walls around your heart. You just can't stop me breaking down the walls around your heart. You'll never stop me breaking down the walls around your heart. You just can't stop me breaking down the walls around your heart. Breaking down the walls. Breaking, I'll keep breaking down the walls around your heart.
See? Oh, sorry. Let it finish up. I dig it. I do. I love it.
Grant
I think
loves it.
I think the problem is they probably shouldn't have called themselves Electric Light Orchestra Part 2 because there's going to be a lot of comparisons. Probably should have went with, hey, this is the Bev Bevan Band.
But then they couldn't have toured, could they? I mean, let's be honest.
It's exactly. They wouldn't have gotten any notoriety.
They went out and toured, and I think all credit to them that they also released albums at the same time. So how many heritage bands now just go out and tour and don't even bother to release an album? So at least give them credit for doing some new music, I think.
But if you think about this, what was this, 94? What year was this? Remind me, 94?
93, I think.
93.
Yeah.
Well, still at this, no, this is 94.
94,
so, So people could still tour. You know, ELO wasn't out of the public eye for all that long. So, you know, to go with, Michael says the Electric Light Ensemble or something. Maybe they could have used that, but come on. Donnie's going, that was great. I think it was fabulous.
This is in the middle of grunge, you know, so crazy.
I don't have a problem with it. I think it's the name that killed it. But then again, if they changed the name, it might have killed it. All right. So we already got Marco's thoughts on this record. We've got a 5.5. We've got a 6.5 so far. Anybody else who wants to rate this record, I am ready to take your numbers. I'm going to throw it over to the Parish of Rock, I think. Or did I go Webb? Let's go to Webb, get his thoughts, and then we'll throw it over to the Parish.
Okay, well, I won't say too much because I know Parish will probably say some better things about it. But that song is good. What you just played is good. Maybe the third time hearing it, I don't know. It sounded better. The chorus is kind of 80s movie-esque, kind of, big chorus, but it was catchy. And Bev was throwing in some good little drum fills there. It was just that sounded a lot better than, I don't know, here with the headphones or something. I don't know. It's good. I didn't find stuck with me at all, but Whiskey Girl, and Marco had talked about that. Whiskey Girls is a pretty good blues guitar rocker. Kind of sounds like you'd hear it in a bar and you're going to dance and shake your booty and all that stuff. Kind of has a little Keep Your Hands to Yourself by Georgia Satellites. Doesn't sound like them, but it has that same structure, song structure. I put Love and Money is Love or Money is just a ballad. It was, with some cool guitar fills and kind of sounded like early 80s ELO, maybe like around Time or something like that. And I didn't say much else about the album, but what you just played, Break Down the Walls, is I think the best sounding song or the best song. And I think it was better really maybe than any song on the first album we talked about. And with all that said, even though I didn't say much, I'd give it I'd still give it like a 5.5. That's all I'm going to do. 5.5 for both of them. But that song was like an 8.
Okay.
But the rest of the album didn't do much for me. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're getting a lot of good feedback in the chat. I'm going to throw it over to the Parish of Rock and get his thoughts on it. Parish, what's your thoughts on this record?
I'm going to point out the album cover. I think it's quite interesting that the album cover is the electric light shattering. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that was symbolic. I'm sure it was at the time. I like the album. I think this is more of an ELO album than the last one. I like the fact that it's effectively a double album. I like the fact it's got a concept running through it with the sort of overture at the beginning. Then you've got the interludes. You've got a lot of orchestration through it all, much more than I think the previous one. I love the fact that Kelly's back on vocals, whether that's lead vocals or backing vocals, and I definitely think that gives the ELO sound. But I think the violins are good on it as well. And let's be honest, there's half of the original ELO playing on this rather than just one that there was on the previous album. So I think this really does justify giving themselves the title ELO 2 or Part 2. Still missing Jeff Lynne for the quality of the songs and his vocals. I think this one, if I'm critical of this, I think it's a little bit too middle of the road. I think it hasn't got a lot of edge to it, which it might sound odd saying edge with ELO, but I do think the 70s album had some edge. But I think it's got better songs than the previous one. The one you played I really like, but I don't think it's the best song on the album. Don't Wanna, I think it's really good. It's kind of new wavy and quirky. Whiskey Girls has been mentioned. That sounds like that could have been Bryan Adams off mid-80s, sort of Bryan Adams at his best. I think that's a really good song. So Glad You Say Goodbye, I think it's another really good song. So I think there's a lot of good songs. I like the fact they were being ambitious with the way that it hangs together. But most of all, I just like the fact that Kelly's back in there and his vocals, and in some ways his backing vocals make ELO as much as Jeff Lynne's lead vocals, I would suggest, certainly during that classic era. Somebody mentioned that Breaking Down the Walls was like Tears for Fears. I think there's a few songs on it that sound a bit Tears for Fears like. So, and that's not a bad thing in my view. And I think it's a shame actually that they didn't continue with new material as ELO 2 after this, because I think that they'd actually started to find a bit of form with it. It's worth mentioning the previous album charted in the UK. It got to number 34 and charted in a few countries around Europe, whereas this one didn't chart at all, which is maybe why they gave up recording anything after this. But I think the production's good. I think the production stands up pretty well as well. So I gave the last one 6.5. I prefer this one, so I'm going to give it a 7.
All right. All right, cool. All right, excellent. All right, what's my thoughts on this record? Well, I think you got a little bit more. What are my thoughts on this? I love the track we just played. I mean, I think there are standouts on this track. Moment of Truth, the overture that starts off the whole thing. Phenomenal. Power of a Million Lights, Breaking Down the Walls that we played is fantastic. One More Tomorrow, it's catchy. You've got Phil Bates, who's doing some more songwriting on here, which is fabulous. Eric Troyer, I think, is improving. Again, you've got Kelly on here. I mean, it adds, it gives it more credibility. I will say that. And I think during the symphonic peaks of this record, I think it echoes ELO a lot more. I do think that there's some filler on this record. Both of these records are not perfect by any means. And I think some of the tracks come off a little bit dated, kind of like a little bit more AOR. But still, if you we look at some of the comments that we've had, you look at this with a lot of stuff that came out in 93, this record looks pretty damn good. What would I give it? Now, do I think that this is better than the previous record? I'm not saying that, but I like tracks on here. I think I would be happy. I'm just going to go with a 7 because I don't have any problems with it. You know what? Considering the ELO material that came out, this really does sound a lot more like ELO to me than some other things. So I'll give it a 7. Why not? Anybody else have want to chime in? I'm looking. I don't think we're going to have anything. All right. Well, let's see what we get. I know this album's going to fare better.
What did we give What did most of us give Balance of Power? We didn't. It wasn't too high, was it? Anybody remember? I don't
remember.
Was it like in the sixes, somewhere in the six?
Possibly,
Yeah, I can't remember. I think 6.5, maybe even the 7.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
this one's coming in with the 6.7. And the other one had a 6.8. So the first one fared better.
It was
Go figure.
Cretan's 8. It was Cretan's 8.
Oh, wait a minute. Cretan's coming in. Hold on. Things are going to change. We got a 7 from Cretan. We got a 6.8 from Steven.
That's going to raise it up.
It's coming around, kids. Not that I'm trying to boost it. I want it to be accurate. Anybody else got anything? All right, we'll tally this up now. We have a 6.7.
Wait a second.
Well, it still doesn't make it. The first time got a 6.8 and this got a 6.7. It's a solid 6.7. I don't know, kids.
But
The
if
first
Bev's
time's going to win.
If Bev's watching, it's a 9.5.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If we can get Bev on here, yeah.
The drumming is at least an 11. I would
The
suggest.
drumming was better. I think the drumming was better on the second album. I don't know. It just sounded the way they recorded or something. I don't know who produced the second one. I usually know these things.
Stephen Galfas, and I've no idea who he is.
I don't know who that is either.
Or Stefan, rather. Stefan Galfas.
Stefan.
Yeah.
Well, he did a
Yeah,
good
anyway.
job.
Huh? Because you would think on the first one Bev would be even more prominent because he's
Yeah,
kind of the leader, and then on this, he seems to sound. I agree with that. I think he sounds better on the second one.
Mm-hmm. A little more creative, like the old Bev.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. The numbers don't lie. So, anyway, we can wrap this dog up. Go ahead.
Stefan Galfas was a producer and engineer, and he produced Cher, the Allman Brothers, Meatloaf, Striper, Saxon, Sabotage,
Wow.
ELO 2, Good Rats.
Oh, the Good Rats.
So he either produced or engineered, so it's not clear which it was, but he either produced or engineered those artists.
What the hell are you talking about, DC? Is it you can or you can't? And who is Fred Fortano? What are you talking about? Who is that? Who's that?
DC talks about Fred Fartino all the time. I've heard him say it.
Can you get him or not get him? What do you? I can't keep track with you people.
DC, explain yourself about Fred Fartino.
I can get Fred Fartino. Remind me real quick who Fred Fartino is.
It's just DC being silly.
God, he's driving me. What? I expect this from Sydney, but not from you, DC. Fartino is a gas.
Of course he is.
Fred is first chair on Triangle. Oh, my God. I know that running joke, but I thought, forget it. Thanks, all right,
Dave.
panel. Nice to see you guys, chatters. Take care and have a good evening. Well, West Coast Dave, please clean up after yourself. I don't want anything. Please throw away all your trash in the trash can on the way out. Anyway, everybody, if you see these in the wild used, which you would never see them, I'd say pick them up, but I don't know. I don't know. It's mediocre. It's not great. It's not bad. All right, everybody, let's wrap this dog up. We have more in the ELO series, but we can now check Electric Light Orchestra Part 2 off the list. All right, I want to thank Webb, Marco, and the Parish of Rock for coming on today. Anybody here anything more to add before we wrapped it up?
Can I just say my last the way I feel
Yes,
about
sir.
this is I said
Yes.
this at the beginning and I want to say it again. Like my
Go
kind of
ahead.
takeaway is like I find the idea that this happened way more interesting than the two albums actually were. Like when you go back and think that like Carl Wayne sang on ELO 2, like not on the actual album, but he sang with ELO, with Jeff Lynne. Like that's, to me, that's fascinating. And I find that the idea of Electric Light Orchestra Part 2 was very interesting. I was excited to get into this, but I just find that it was more interesting than the albums actually ended up being. And maybe that's why I'm a little disappointed with them, but that's my takeaway.
All right, cool. Again, everybody who, if you're familiar with these records, please leave a comment down below and let us know what you think. All right, gentlemen, Webb, Parish, Marco, we will be back. We'll have another show next month. So, okay, if we looked at these records, what are we looking at next month? What should we look at?
Well, there's Zoom.
Yep.
Are we going to do the orchestra?
I
don't think so.
I don't have that. And
I don't have it either, but
so I'll have to go looking.
But Marco acted like it might be worth listening to.
I only heard the one song. It's kind of a continuation. It's like ELO Part 2, without Bevan in it. But it has Kelly Grucut and some of the other guys. Like I think Eric Troyer's still in it. But
well,
Some Kind of Magic was all right, but I think that was just a single. I haven't heard the album.
Okay, Part 2A.
Well,
like
Part 2B,
or 2B.
I mean, if we're being inclusive, we might want to look at it.
The question is to be or not to be, isn't it? That's the question.
I don't even know if it's on
Thanks,
Spotify.
Ken. Appreciate the kind words.
But definitely Zoom. And I think
Please
there's a couple
more.
of Jeff Lynne's ELO albums, right?
Christian wants us to cover more sucky records.
Christian.
Well, I think that's guaranteed.
Well, it's fun because ladies and gentlemen, let's be fair. Who was talking about these records?
Let's be fair. Who wants to talk
Absolutely
about
no one, except the Warehouse.
The Warehouse. Yes.
You can thank me now. Anyway, all right, cool. All right, well, we'll discuss. We'll see what we want to do, but we'll be back next month. Well, I don't know what we're doing, but we'll be back. More ELO to come. All right, everybody, keep it clean, Rap the Rascal, and we will see you on the next one.